And good morning. Welcome to another edition of the Kitchings Table. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings, and always glad to be with you here on Tuesday mornings as we talk about things of importance or things that are just interesting that you need to know about here on the Kitchings Table. We'd like to thank Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM, for allowing us to bring our show to you and bring you those things we feel that are necessary in our discussions. We'd also like to let you know that you can check us out on our platforms on the social media, either by YouTube, Facebook Live, Roku, or GPAC 23. One of those four you can find us there, and we're always glad to know that you are with us. Joining me as always is my co-host and beautiful lady of many things who does so many things. She is a very diverse woman, Ronline Cannady. And good morning, Ronline.
Good morning. How are you this morning?
I'm doing wonderfully well. Thank you for asking. So today it is Black History Month. And, I'm always a little, I won't say perplexed, but I'm always a little curious as to all the things that we can bring up in 28 days, as opposed to all the things we can bring up about Black history in 365 days. It's almost like we open a book and close it, and before we finish it, we're done with it. And there's not enough hours in the day or days in the month of February for us to get through many things. But here we are again, uh, Black History Month, that was started by Dr. Carter G. Woodson. So, what are your thoughts about Black History Month?
Yes, you're right. It should not have been the shortest month. We needed those extra 2 days or 3 days in the month in order to really just get as much as possible in there. But um, I'm so glad that Carter G. Wilson was able to get things in order so that we could be recognized in what we do and how the people before us have impacted our nation.
One of the things that has happened during Black History Month, and a lot of times throughout cities throughout the country, numerous schools throughout the country in the Black communities have been named for famous Black Americans. And I know here in Jacksonville, there are several schools in Jacksonville named after not only just nationally known Black Americans, but many local who Black Americans who impacted our community. But I say that because I grew up in a community that by the time I got to sixth grade, they had built a new elementary school and they named it Carter G. Woodson. And a lot of times you hear the names, but you don't always get the history. You don't always get the information about who that person is or was and what their, I guess, what their contribution to our society was. But as we get older and learn more about gentlemen like Carter G. Woodson, W.E.B. Du Bois, we always hear about the George Washington carvers. I think probably every city in America where you have a Black community's got a school called either George Washington Carver or Booker T. Washington, and most times Booker T. Washington are high schools. But uh, what do you think about that phenomenon, Ronline, that a lot of schools are named after famous Black Americans in our communities, so that our children can always have someone to look up to?
You make a very important point because so much of our history is lost. And as we know, there is a movement right now to suppress our history. So with the schools being named, I think more lessons needs to be taught about what they are doing. And speaking of schools, do we have a school named after Benjamin, what is his name, Banneker? You know who I'm talking about?
Yeah, Benjamin Banneker. Uh, for those of you who may not be familiar with a lot of the history about Benjamin Banneker was an engineer. He was an inventor. Benjamin Banneker basically laid out the city streets of Washington, D.C. Now, if you've ever gone to Washington, D.C., our capital, it has remnants of a European flair because there are a lot of what they call turnabouts. And that's where, you get to this big circle and streets spur off from that circle for you to go in different directions. Well, this man laid out Washington, D.C. in such a unique way that when you came to those runabouts that would take you in different directions, it just made it easy because that runabout, you got to remember, there were no street lights at the time he thought about designing the city streets of Washington, D.C., unlike Paris, France, where they do have many runabouts, and you've seen them in movies maybe where people are driving around fountains or other statues and they're driving in these big circles. Well, those are just ways to get you to go in a different direction without a street light. But Benjamin Banneker uh, created, laid it out, put it together in Washington, D.C. And I say that because if you get on one of those streets and you don't know where you're going, I guarantee you, and I'm speaking from personal experience, you will become lost very quickly. And if you don't turn around and get back to your focal point of where you're trying to be on what street, you will get lost. And for those of us who have been to Washington, we know that many of the streets in Washington are named after states. They are named with letters like I Street and K Street and G Street, and then they are named with numbers. And I think they wanted to make it as simple as possible, but still, Washington is a very, in street design, very complex, but there are so many streets in that city that just cross-sect. So he did a great job of laying that out. But yeah, I believe probably in Washington, D.C., at least if no other place, there's a school, elementary school or whatever, middle school called Benjamin Banneker.
Okay. And just to, since we're talking about schools, I just want to let you know the feedback that I received from our talks dealing with the school and literacy. And the main thing that people capitalized on, Earl, was when you talked about how the children would deviate from walking to school and going, stopping at the convenience stores, getting their snacks, their sugary snacks. So they'll be all, as you said, amped up by the time they get to school. And of course, it causes behavior disruptions in the classroom sometimes. So, some of the parents and grandparents have now decided to stop what they're doing, to walk their children to school personally, or to see within their distance that they are going straight to school and going where they need to be. As you said, go straight to the cafeteria to get the food that they were supposed to get. They were
Yes,
supposed to
yes.
eat so that they can be balanced for the rest of the day. So I just wanted to let you know that when your statement and our conversation has made an impact for someone, some families, because they were wondering like, okay, this child always talking about I need money or whatever, and I need it for school, not realizing that there are about 8 convenience stores along the way where they could stop off to. And then one family talked about they keep hearing about human trafficking is on the rise. So there's a church, you talk about Washington, D.C. There are a lot of corners where big, large buildings are sitting, look like in the middle of the street. Have you seen some of those? And so one of the ladies were talking about her child, her granddaughter, as a matter of fact. There's a church that seems to block off her line of sight. And she said now she just walks to the church. She doesn't try to embarrass her or whatever, but she walks to the church so that she can see what's happening between that block and her actually getting safely to school. She said, she was thanking us for, the topics that we've been bringing out. So I just want to tell you that we are doing great work here.
Well, thank you very much. And thank you to all our listeners and viewers who get a chance to check us out on social media for your thoughtfulness in providing us with some feedback. We are so pleasantly pleased to have that happen for us. And as we can get your feedback and incorporate it in what we talk about and discuss, it just helps to open up the conversation to a much broader topic and to much broader opportunities to discuss many things. So we thank you for that. You brought up the thing about the snacks and the convenience stores, but did you also know that the schools themselves are also part of the contributors to our children's being amped up because they provide some type of snacks in school? Now, one of the things that, and I'm not against incentives, and when I was doing my fair share in the elementary school, I did have incentives. My incentives, though, never included any food item. There were no Skittles, there were no chips, there were no Taki, there was nothing that you had to eat. And the kids would say, Mr. Kitchens, you don't have any snacks? I said, I don't do snacks as incentives. I created a system whereby if they did my work that I asked them to do, they would earn like what we call like Monopoly dollars, because the Monopoly dollars that they earn, I had a different name for them, but I had a mentor dollars. If they earn mentor dollars in denominations of 1, 5, 10, 20, if you earn enough mentor dollars, I would set up one day during the week in my office. I would have all these items that they could use their money to purchase. And to me, that was a little bit more engaging than that systematic snack recycling all the time of putting sugar. You get it in the morning before you get to school. You get it when you get to school. You get it before you go to lunch because the teacher gives you snack treats. And the schools give kids snacks. They have a snack before lunch or something in the morning. They have breakfast, then they have lunch, then they give them another snack. Teachers can give snacks. All these snacks are just heaped on our children. And a lot of times when they get to lunch, they don't eat. There's a lot of waste of milk going on in our school systems. People don't talk about that either. But my incentives, I just couldn't do the food thing. That was like, it's too much. I mean, your teacher already is doing it. So if you did my work and earn your money, you could buy your items. And I made some things on the high end and some things on the low end. And it worked out. And some kids worked harder than others, which is like life. You work hard, you get more, you can buy more. And I remember one kid one time, he had earned quite a bit because he was a pretty sharp guy. He offered to purchase items for some of his classmates who could not afford some of the things they wanted to purchase. And I thought, well, isn't that a great thing to see a student wanting to help another student at that age in elementary school? Now, this is not middle school or high school. We're talking about them have that fortitude. So it's a great thing. But I wanted you to know that the schools are also contributors, either by individual class or schools with all these snacks. I mean, and the snacks are wholesome to a point. They are fresh fruits and things, juices, but they're also cookies. So, you have to be very mindful of what's going in your child's body every day, because we didn't have snacks when I went to school. There was no snack. If you did something good in school, in your classroom, you got congratulated, good job, or it showed up on your scores on your paper. But to give you a snack, a few Skittles or something like that because you answered a question right, oh no. Oh no.
Okay. Well, we did have vending machines, so
In elementary school?
we had vending machines all the way through school. Yes.
Okay, well, see, that just shows you what a difference of 10 years can make. It's like a vending machine in a school. For kids, no, you had a vending machine that the teachers could use. But you taking your money was used to buy your lunch, and that was it. Now, I will say that after school, there were stops at what we call confectionery stores. You can stop and get some cookies and snacks then, but that's on your way home. So if you're walking, you burn that off. You'll burn that off. But I'm talking about during the course of a day. Oh, there are no snacks. There are no snacks For you answering a question correct? Oh no. Congratulations. Very good. Thank you. Good
And the
job.
gold star. That goes
No,
on.
with no ghost. I'm telling you what we got. You got a congratulations, good answer, and they moved on to the next student. It was, it was not all these awards and stuff. You're supposed to be there to learn. You show that you are learning by the way you answer your questions and do your work in school. Period. You get a grade. You get a grade. And my thing was I want to make as many A's as I can. That looks good. I love it. But
Well,
all
there,
the extras, no.
well, there you have it. So the breakdown of what took place into the school system, coming out of the one rule school system into a multiple class school system, and then what? Adding vending machines, and then vending machines, we're out the door.
Hey, now I think we all can relate. Well, I don't know. They do it now. They call it a different name and they have a different way of doing it. But when we were in school, you could get a teacher had like I know in junior high school and high school they had these uh, pieces of wood that's probably about maybe an eighth of an inch thick, maybe about a foot long and about 10 inches wide, and they would paint on their hall pass. You would take your teacher's hall pass because it would have their name on it, and that allowed you to go from the classroom to the office or to the cafeteria for the teacher. And there used to be times where the teacher would tell you to go to the Coke machine and, get a Coke for them and bring it back. And I mean, but you got that hall pass, you were something special. Now, don't abuse your privilege of using that hall pass. Go where you're supposed to go and come back. Because if you go to somebody else's classroom and somewhere else you're not supposed to be and get in trouble, oh man, you'll never get the hall pass ever. The teacher won't ever trust you to do that ever again. But if you do what you're supposed to, oh yeah, that's one of those perks and benefits, perks and benefits. So, that hall pass was something special because it showed that a teacher had confidence in you and you had done some things. Again, that was an incentive.
Right,
That
right.
was an incentive to be able to get to use the hall pass because she wouldn't call or he wouldn't call any or everybody. There were certain students teachers would call to do those things. Responsible students who are not going to be out there in the hallway acting a clown or doing something crazy, running in the bathroom, turning on the water and leaving it running. No, because it'll all track back to you. So no, but snacks, treats, no, no, you didn't
Okay.
get any of that.
Wow.
So that was, the difference in where they were then and where they are now. And again, it's all to motivate children to learn and get their work. And there was nothing like getting report cards and knowing that you had done well on your report cards, so that your parents could be proud of what you've done. And speaking of this, Ronline, before we go into what we really wanted to talk about today, which is going to be about a little bit about Black history and governors in the country. I was looking at CNN this morning, and they had a 9-year-old little Black boy who has already graduated from high school. He is already into his first semester of college, and he wants to be one of a few science professions. One of them is an astrophysicist.
Whoa.
An
Congratulations.
astro, do you know how smart you must be to be an astrophysicist? I
Yes.
mean that job title is way off the chart.
You need that
Astrophysicist.
engineering math in order to do
That's you run circles around an engineer as
it.
far as your aptitude.
Mhm.
So he says that an engineer, a couple other scientific things he was interested in doing. I mean, the lowest thing on there was he wanted to be a web designer. So you look at
And
astrophysicists.
he has to get his marketing out there, right? Because that's the way you do it through websites. So yes, I can understand that too.
So I'm like 9 years old, and it made me think about the TV show where the little boy is so smart that
Little
He's
Sheldon on the
yeah,
big area.
he's in school. Or the little kid that was on the My Wife and Kids with uh Damian Wayne, where the little boy was so smart. He had like 3 doctorate degrees, and he's like 10 years old, and he's got like 3 doctorate degrees. That's the way they. So I'm looking at this little boy, real life, 9 years old, graduated from high school, and you know what he said to Don Lemon?
What did he
His
say?
his his mother was talking about, you graduated from high school. You graduated from high school at 9 years old. The little boy said, "What's the big deal?
'Cause he
What's
has,
the big deal?"
yeah, he has so much to do.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so I
And why
graduated from high
aren't,
school.
and to his point, why aren't more doing it?
Yeah.
Hmm.
Well, he is a phenomenon. It's not going to be many kids who can do what he's doing. There have been geniuses, and that's what they kind of title these kids. Well, he's a genius. Well, it's not going to be many geniuses born every day. So at 9 years old, I'm like, man, he wants to be an astrophysicist at 9.
And this goes
And
to, not to cut you off, Earl, but this goes back to what I was talking about. The study shows that our children, we have to get, if we're going to do anything for their mind whatsoever, we have to get it into them by the time, before they turn between 7 and 9 years old. And that proves the point, because what that he would be about, what, 9 or 10.
he's 9.
He's 9. Okay, so to have graduated, high school, and already taking college courses, the science is right on that. Then
Well, the I guess the downside of a 9-year-old graduating from high school and being in college, academically, he's very astute
hmm
and he's very knowledgeable. But when we talk about that age and being able to just have some communication skills to talk to adults at a level, it requires uh, life experiences and just, you can't fast forward a kid from 9 to 18 overnight. And in addition to this uh, boy doing what he was doing, I also got a chance to see someone who looked about his same age, but he was interviewing athletes like at the Pro Bowl, NFL Pro Bowl game. He was physically being like a sports broadcaster and interviewing athletes of a professional level. So he looked like he might have been 9 or 10. And here he is talking to 23, 24, 25-year-old, a little bit older men who are playing the game of football. But he's speaking so articulately, and he has no problem asking what I find to be a problem for adult broadcasters in the sports world to do, asking good questions, not something crazy and off, you just asking a question for a reaction. He was asking intelligent, I guess that's what I'm trying to say, intelligent questions to these athletes. And everybody was kind of remarked about how good he was. And they were all astonished that here he is, so small, asking these questions. And I'm like, wow, he's already, in my opinion, a pro at what he does for his age and what he's doing, because not many kids, you're intimidated. You see these guys, you're either infatuated or you're intimidated by these guys. You like them because they play the sport, but you're intimidated. But he's not intimidated. He's not afraid to talk to them. He's not afraid to ask him questions that are very polished. And I'm like, wow. And he's a little black boy at the same time. Now, just so we know that we have some guys who are out there on the horizon that are going to be movers and shakers. So they're out there.
that reminds me of Miss Gorman, who um, was at the inauguration for President Biden, when she was reading, and all of the things that she went through, especially with her speech impediment, and how she overcame it. So you are absolutely right. And it goes back to what we've been talking about literacy, why it's so important. And I wonder what those children today, what books they would recommend for their fellow students and, that they came through the ranks with, what helped them get to where they are today, and being able to articulate, as you say, the questions, being able to have a dynamic conversation to bring out to the world what we would like to hear from those athletes or anyone that they're speaking with, because communication is very important. This is how we learn the information that was needed. And it made me think about Benjamin Banneker. He talked about him with astrology, and all of the things that he was able to do. And he's self taught. They said that he learned how to read and write. It came during that banishment of slavery movement. He taught himself how to articulate through life, to wherein today his name still lives on for the things that his contributions. So I'm looking for dynamic things to come from these young people, and I'm so happy to learn about them as well. I was talking with family members yesterday of how, we all have, our children have gone on to um, participate with education to make sure that they are continual learners and going on to do great things. So these are the things that we need, and it leads right into what we're talking about, our topic today.
So true. So this is the Kitchings Table here on Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM. I'm your host, Earl Kitchings, along with co-host Ronline Cannady. We thank you and welcome you to our show today. Hopefully you'll find it entertaining and informational. We are always glad to be with you. You can also find us on social media at Roku, Facebook Live, YouTube, and GPAC23. So Ronline, our topic or our subject as it relates to Black history today was based on the fact that in the state of Florida, we have a governor who is really in his, I guess, in his mind, wanting to turn so many things backward or minimize things from education uh, to other things that he wants to take away or have a way of impacting. And it made me think, well, governors are the CEOs of states. And over the course of history here in the United States, how many governors, how many men and or women have we had who were Black that were serving in that capacity? And in looking at it, I found that since 1873, there have only been 5 Black governors. 5. And interesting enough, you go back to 1872 through 1873, and the only governor in the United States at that time was PBS Pinchback of Louisiana. He was a Republican, and he served that one term or 1 year in the state of Louisiana. But it would be another almost 80 years before another Black person would be elected to the state house as the governor of a state. That was Douglas Wilder. In 1990, he became the governor of Virginia. After him, DeVal Patrick of Massachusetts was the governor from 2007 to 2015. David Paterson of New York from 2008 to 2010. And most recently, Wes Moore is the governor of the state of Maryland, and he's also a Democrat. So those are the 5 individuals who have been governor, who have actually been elected governor of a state here in the United States. Those are the 5, and I'm gonna let you weigh in on that before I move a little bit further forward on the rest of that information.
Yes, so it just takes me back to how I felt when the state of Georgia was lost in that recent election with Stacey Abrams and Brian Kemp. And I'm like, um, I was so disappointed because of the things that were brought out of if Governor Kemp was to get back into office, what would be lost? So many rights and things like that would be lost, beyond that chopping block, if you will. And we don't know what's going to happen in the next 4 years, but I tell you what, just dealing with Florida alone, with our educational system, how it's being affected, the House bills that are coming on, to stamp out our Black history, when the order came for the teachers having to box up the books in their classrooms. Now, how the books got there in the beginning, the teachers didn't put them there. It was voted on for what books are supposed to be in those classrooms, what they're supposed to administer in the classrooms to begin with. So now, to keep the teachers from being fined, and when you're talking about being fined, you're talking about the economy of teachers. So that's how that's their that's where they work. That's their bread and butter, to be able to utilize the money that they've earned to take care of their household responsibilities and to be able to possibly save for retirement. So when you're talking about cutting them off at the helm of, fines and all of the things that they have to worry about, and on top of that, they're given a curriculum that needs to be taught to their students in order for that student to pass on to the next grade. That's a lot, that, and that's threatening, and I call that, I think, governmental. So with all of that said, um, I just looked at the rest. As you say, the governor is the CEO of his state. So if that catches on through the United States of 50 states, we are in trouble. And not every child, not every there can't be a migrational movement to move the child into a different state. You would like to be able to do that, but that's not going to happen. So we have to be mindful of who we put in office as our CEOs, and what values do they have, and are their values like-minded. And so this whole thing is important to me. It's important to you. And I realize when you talked about, we have to have people who have our interests in mind. And so they need to, it's like the board of directors, as you talked about. There needs to be some representatives. If you could look at this as the board of directors in order to be able to carry the things that are important to us so that we can keep moving forward instead of being moved backward. And one of the questions that came along is our current governor trying to move us back to slavery instead of moving us forward? So thank God for the 13th Amendment in the Constitution that keeps that from happening. But suppose the Constitution is threatened and gets thrown out. So that's what this, when you were talking about, out of from the 1700s, and here we are in 2023, only 5 were able to be a CEO of our state. Unacceptable.
Well, you make a valid point about turning the clock backwards and taking us back to a time. Let me read you this statement real quick that I found from the Center for American Progress. Uh, one one statement says structural racism continues to corrupt American democracy and preserve racial inequality. Then they make this statement: the United States is a contradiction. Its founding principles embrace the ideals of freedom and equality, but it is a nation built on the systematic exclusion and the suppression of communities of color. So when we talk about the fact that we've only had 5 individuals to become governors, uh, there were 4 people who ran for governor in 2022 who were Black: Stacey Abrams of Georgia, Wes Moore of Maryland, Deidre DeJear of Iowa, Yolanda Flowers of Alabama, and Chris Jones of Arkansas. So you had 5 individuals, 1, 2, 3, 5 to run, 1 to win. And for Stacey Abrams, it was her second time running, and I think her strongest effort was the first time when she ran against the current governor. And I believe that he should have stepped away from his position as the Secretary of State, because that gave him a very significant edge in manipulating the voting system. But that did not happen. She ran a very great race, finished very strong to him. It did not work out, but I still, in my mind, believe that some things may have happened to help the current governor of Georgia win the election. Although he did do a little bit better in the second running, that was that. Then we talk about some other places where we've had people to run for governor but did not win. The great Tom Bradley, the first Black mayor of Los Angeles, lost in 1982 in his efforts to become the governor of the state of California. So here's some other people who ran for governor and the years they ran, but were not successful. Cleo Fields ran for the governor of Louisiana in 95. Clem Blackwell ran for governor in 2006. Andrew Gillum, as we know here in Florida, ran against DeSantis in 2018. And then Ben Gillis ran for governor of Maryland, but was not successful. Now, of those people who ran, and as I said, there have only been 5, most states have what we call lieutenant governors, i.e. assistant governors, and they are elected. Ironically, 30 Black Americans, Ronline, 30 have served as lieutenant governors since 1868. 30. And most of the time, the states where they started out back in the 1800s were in the South: Louisiana, South Carolina, Mississippi, and then it kind of it started to spread out. But it was almost 100 years between the last lieutenant governor in the 1800s to the first lieutenant governor in the 1900s. And Mervyn Donnelly of California was the lieutenant governor in 1975, and the last lieutenant governor who was Black finished his term out in 1877, which was Cesar Antunez back in Louisiana. So you can see that's now, you may think that's just, well, that's just the way it worked out. No, a lot of that has to do with the right to vote. When you are marginalized, you cannot vote. These are the reasons why you don't see Black people serving some of these positions after the, Civil War in the late 1870s and 80s, because there was a push, there was a law, there was a women, Black people, other people of color were denied the right to vote. And because of that, there was not a lot of equity, fairness going on in the political fabric of America. And it took almost 100 years, at least from the gubernatorial standpoint, to see some movement. But after 1975, George Brown of Colorado, and then Douglas Wilder. Douglas Wilder became the first governor, but he was also lieutenant governor. And then uh, after that, you know, it was a drop off, and then you came back and saw some more people. So since 2003, there have been, let's just say, 20 individuals who have served as lieutenant governor. And many of several of them, I won't say many, several of them have been Black females.
Mhm. Okay. So there is some movement going on, and I guess we can safely say that more and more people are understanding their right to vote. I know that there's a push for the Innocence Project that's going on to get to remove more people, innocent people, from out of the prison system so that they can um, receive pardons or claim their innocence again in society, wherein it's no longer whatever they were accused of doing, the felonies, those have to be dropped, to wherein they can reclaim their right to vote. And there is a push for more people to um, get those felonies dropped off from their record as well so that they can start voting again. Um, when you get convicted of a felony, that's the first thing that's being attacked is your right to vote. So, there's a push of, with our children, and this is why we were talking so diligently about what's going on, dealing with how the big companies now are starting schools, private schools, in order for, I guess segregation, it seems like, may come back or what have you. So we need to be mindful of the movements that's going on around us, because we do not want our children to be a habitant of a jail cell. We do not need that. That will set us back more so than anything, and we have seen movement of that. And so we need to be working on that as well. So many things that we need to work on in our lifetimes, and also to pass that on to our generations so that they can continue the work of, what it is that needs to be done in order to make sure that our generations to come are able to put good people into office and governing bodies so that we can keep our work moving forward. It kind of reminded me, since this is one of those stations that promotes the teachings of Jesus Christ, that when the parents went looking for Jesus, and he was sitting there with the theologians and everything, and learning from them and him teaching them as well. He looked at his parents and was like, you know what? You know who I am.
Exactly.
Yeah, you know what I came here to do. So I don't have time to waste. So, I'm looking at what you said about the 9, 10, 11, 12-year olds now. It's like, they don't have time to waste. They need to get out here and to and make an impact. And that's what we're trying to do today, is to really make an impact into your mind, of that you'll be able to start these building blocks that has already been started, and to um, start a movement of your own. And we see how powerful this movement is, of that war that's on our American history. So if it's that strong to them, can you imagine what they know that we should already realize, of who we are today and what impact that we can have on our future? So thank you so much for bringing this topic to light.
Well, you are certainly welcome. And in looking at the Black women who have served and are serving as lieutenant governors, The first Black female to serve as a lieutenant governor was Jeanette Bradley out of Ohio in 2003. She served from '03 to '05. The next lady was Jennifer Carroll, who served from 2011 to 13 here in Florida. Janine Hampton served in Kentucky from 15 to 19. Sheila Oliver serves and is currently serving in New Jersey. Juliana Stratton is currently serving as the lieutenant governor in Illinois. Andrea Stewart Cousins served 2 times appointed in the state of New York. And right now, Winona Sears is serving as the lieutenant governor in the state of Virginia. And she's been in office since 2022. So there are people who are making inroads, whether they can get to the next seat, which is governor. It's a very difficult thing. Running across a state to try to get your name known is difficult, but people have done it. People are doing it. People are seeking it out. These are all pioneers, in my opinion. 30 pioneers for lieutenant governor, 5 for governor, 35 in all, who have sat in the capital of their state, who have lived in the state mansion for the state of that they represent. And these have definitely been pioneers who have made some things happen, made some things known, but we must continue to have people like them fight the good fight and get in good trouble, as former Congressman John Lewis would say. So we want to keep bringing the information to you. And I thought about this, Ronline, simply from this standpoint. We've got about 3 minutes to go. A lot of topics about Black history are so common and so redundant in their visibility to us and our children. We hear about some of the same things. I remember going in an elementary classroom one time and looked up on the wall, and they had pictures of famous Black Americans. I'm like, those are the same famous Black Americans that they were teaching us about when I was in elementary school. And that really got next to me, because I'm like, are we trying to say we haven't had some other pioneers and leaders to come forth to have them replace the ones from the Harriet Tubman, George Washington Carver, Frederick Douglass days? We're still holding on to them. We've had a lot of people come along, but I didn't see their pictures. And that really disturbed me.
Yes, you're absolutely right. It makes me think about the fight that broke out in Do the Right Thing, that Spike Lee was trying to make sure that we understood that there have been more people since that time frame that needs to be recognized. So you're absolutely right. I would love to see them as well. I was reading in Michelle Obama's book about Becoming, where they finally were able to see their picture unveiled and placed in the White House. And it looked like it took a little bit of time, from when they left office for that to happen. So, these are the things that's important, so that we can let our children know and our grandchildren know that we haven't been lost, and we can't be lost. We can't allow that to happen. So thank you for bringing that up as well. I thought about Cicely Tyson last night as I was watching her on a show, and how it made me think about her time with Harriet Tubman, that she portrayed Harriet Tubman. So it's like how far we've come, but as I think it was Beatrice Scott King said, we still have far to go.
Well, we do still have a long road to go. We still have quite a mountain to climb. And each and every day we must work to walk that long road and climb that high mountain to make a difference. We cannot afford to have time and the clock be turned back on all the progress we've made. Well, Ronline, that's going to about do it for us today here on the Kitchings Table. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope everybody got something out of our show today. For Ronline, Cannady, I'm Earl Kitchings saying join us next time here on the Kitchings Table here on Awesome Radio, WBISLP 106.9 FM. Until next time, have a great week. And as always, do something good for somebody else.
Thank you. Bye-bye.